Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Between Two Layers. And it's not just another episode. We are back for season 2. Welcome back to the show, Between Two Layers. We have been on hiatus between season 1 and season 2, but we are back. We are better than ever. We have a new format for y'all. I'm Carly Reilly. I'm the host of Overpriced JPEGs. And joining me for all this is co-host Robbie Ferguson. He is the co-founder and president of Immutable. Robbie, it feels good to be back.
It's great to be back, Carly, and good to be with you again.
More bear market podcasting. Let's go, man. This is the time to build, right?
Exactly. No, honestly, actually, just before we even kick off, I think there's no better example of this than we've been really looking at our internal products at the moment, and we're doing A/B split testing on how much the conversion improves for a game using Immutable Passport to onboard gamers than anyone else. And the early signs are it's likely more than 3x conversion. And I was just thinking this would almost be impossible to have the team work on a product for 6 months, obsess over funnel metrics in a bull market, because you have so much noise from investors, from how do you chase narrative clout for how do you tell the best possible story. And literally what we're doing right now is unblocking the path for these games to be successful to create that. So it's definitely my favorite time to be building. I think there's way less to focus on in terms of external stakeholder management, and we can focus much more on genuinely obsessing over products. So it's not just the thing we say.
Well, we have a new format for the show. So we're going to be getting into Immutable Passport a little bit later, some fun news and early metrics around that. But we have a couple things to talk about first. So in today's show, Robbie and I are going to dive into some news of the day, some awesome topics that we want to quick hit, talk about. We are also going to get a game demo from a game building on the Immutable platform. So that'll be fun. We also have a new segment, which is a community spotlight. So Robbie will be taking questions from y'all, the Immutable community, Web3 gaming community. Then Robbie and I are going to dive into a deep dive. We're going to dive into a deep dive. This will be a segment where we sometimes have guests on, but it's really a longer frame of time for us to just dive into what is interesting in this space right now. And finally, we have a new segment, which is Robbie's final thoughts, where we give Robbie the stage to just rant and rave about all of the things in his big brain. So this is going to be fun. We're going to start with some news of the day. I want to start with some really exciting news, which is that Gods Unchained is now in the Epic Game Store.
Yeah,
that's a big deal.
It is. I think this roughly launched, I think, a month ago. And we've seen user metrics jump since then. It's really interesting because this comes at the same time as, not to bury or jump the lead, but Google Play also opens up their store to NFTs. And it seems like there's this alternative, essentially, ecosystem that's opening up towards Web3 based assets instead of iOS and instead of Apple right now. And that's going to create a lot of pressure. But more importantly, it creates a lot of clarity for developers who can now know they can go and publish on Play Store, on Android, have access to billions of mobile customers worldwide. With Epic, it's access to desktop users. And ultimately, that is the entire thesis of this space, right? One of my favorite things that Jeff Bezos, who is not always right, but the beautiful thing he always said is, your take rate is my opportunity. And that's actually at the essence of what crypto is doing. And the take rate we're changing is company equity or ownership itself. We're taking this take rate of 100% going back to databases and to publishers, and instead saying, well, if we give this away to the players themselves, we can own a smaller share of a much bigger pie, and we can create something much bigger together. And I think that's exactly what these ecosystems, Epic Store, Google Play, are seeing in terms of this opportunity to essentially take market share from the $20 billion just in-app transaction fee monopoly that we have some other players earning in the space today. So it's a really fascinating dynamic. We don't know how precisely it's going to play out, but super bullish news from Google Play, and thrilled to be on the Epic Store.
What has this meant for Gods Unchained players so far? Have you seen reactions from them?
Yeah, the community was stoked. Obviously, I think you've got a very hardcore community there who is pretty obsessed with the game. And we're focusing a lot internally right now on how do we become exceptional marketers leveraging the unique selling propositions of Web3, which means, how can you develop share to earn schemes? How can you develop ways to basically grow these games in viral ways? My dream would be in 1 or 2 years, instead of a mobile game having to spend $1 billion on performance marketing on ads, you can do the same with Web3 by giving away value to your users. And that's the mechanism by which you grow. So I think we have this really incredible opportunity to actually replace how performance marketing works. And instead of money or dollars going to advertisers, they go to the players themselves in order to generate the same kind of user acquisition.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how, let's call it the maybe slightly smaller players, Google Play being smaller than the iOS App Store, are clearly seeing Web3 as an opportunity to gain some ground on a player like iOS. I also thought it was interesting. I'm reading from this part of this policy update that Google Play made. Apps that want to use NFTs must be transparent with users about tokenized digital assets, and developers can't, quote, promote or glamorize any potential earning from playing or trading activities. So also clearly trying to draw a line around, like, we don't want just a crazy gambling ring.
I think.
Yeah. It's
look,
good to
they don't have real money gambling in these apps, right? So I think it makes native sense for them to kind of apply that principle. You do have social casinos, but that being said, it's a great first step of clarity. And we're already seeing, this trend is continuing. I think it was recently Spotify, which will automatically stop you paying in the app if you're paying with iOS currently, because the churn that they will experience from literally cutting you off through that app is less than the percentage of those people who will then switch to paying via desktop, an alternative mechanism where they're no longer paying Apple a 30% cut. And that's a very big call for a company to make. That goes against all user experience like laws, right? Which is to automatically cancel your your paying subscription. UX or recurring revenue designers would be screaming, but their thesis is actually this cut is so big and our service loyalty is so large that we can make this call and it can be profitable for us. So it's really interesting to see kind of moves like that. You have games like Genshin Impact where they will shut off in-app transaction payments if you've already bought through desktop or something alternative. So you have all sorts of pressures right now on these app stores and ecosystems to open up, to be fairer to creators. You have Kick.com rising to 20% of Twitch's market share off the back of Twitch fumbling the bag with a bunch of creator monetization, and Kick saying, well, hey, we're going to pay 95% to these streamers through donations. So there's this really interesting trend that's observed right now around pro-creator, and that actually being better for business because you are rewarding ultimately what is the content that is going to make your platform successful. We're really excited to see those trends. I think they're very synergistic with what Web3 is trying to build.
The last time you and I really fully caught up, Robbie, was at the Game Developers Conference at GDC in San Francisco in March, which is when you and Polygon, and I was on stage with you and Ryan Wyatt, announced your partnership, which was a really big deal. I mean, you're pulling together the two biggest Web3 gaming platforms out there and forming this pretty powerful partnership. What's the update? What have been the last, X number of months looked like for this program?
Honestly, the partnership has been awesome. I mean, there's always, you have to go through kind of the process of building relationships with every layer of the organization. They're two large companies, Polygon Labs and Immutable. But I think the proof is in the pudding, which is last month, after 3 quarters of consecutive growth of us onboarding deals onto the platform, so onboarding games, last month we had our biggest sales month ever. We onboarded more games by value than ever in the company's lifetime in the last 2 years.
That's in June 2023.
It's June 2023. And this
Part
is
of the bear.
People saying, exactly. This is not when every Web2 company is aping in and saying, hey, we're going to be definitely building something. Let's sign on the dotted line. Let's make sure we can do our pre-sale. This is a much more conservative period of time where people are genuinely making choices to build games because they want to see it come to fruition. And they're not focusing on these splashy headlines for PR positioning or for pre-sales. That to me is the best possible signal. My favorite thing also is that the majority of these developers are Web2. They have pedigree and experience in building games on time. And now our job is just how do we actually help them succeed in this Web3 landscape and build sustainable economies, which I can talk about, but that's something we're really focusing on at the moment. But yeah, look, honestly, I've been thrilled with the partnership. The Polygon Labs team is exceptional. We really love working with them. And I think the most important thing is that we're just simplifying and accelerating this process for games, right? Like before this, you have so many choices. You have Immutable or Polygon, probably the two main choices. which roughly had 40% of deals each. Then you have a bunch of alternative, chains and options and wallets and infrastructure. It's crazy. We're asking these games to not only develop a successful hit game, which is hard enough as it is, because 90% of games fail. It's an entirely power law-driven industry, where the most successful game will be more successful than everything else combined. Same for the second, more than third, fourth, fifth, and so on. And on top of that, we're asking them to design a Web3 economy, design a fungible token and make sure that it's compliant, make sure that their bridges aren't going to get hacked or that their infrastructure is going to be secure, make sure they think about wallet experience. All of these stacks, we can now just say, hey, look, come use this default platform. You have support from these, two giant infrastructure companies. We're going to be there every step of the way, making sure your users have high converting experiences, and you can just focus on building a successful Web2 game. So that's actually the most important thing to me, and we've seen that reaction from game developers so far. So yeah, we're thrilled. It's beaten our expectations, and we're continuing to basically invest off the back of this. So we've hired 10 business developers / partner success in the last 6 weeks. We're ramping up pretty heavily here. We're moving into Japan and Korea very aggressively because of the numbers that we've seen from just our conversion rate right now. And the more people we can onboard, the more people we succeed.
Well, you referenced in there one of the high points in the industry right now in a time when, things are a little unstable, which is the Asian market, which feels like it's doing quite well, or certainly there's a lot of enthusiasm out. You have this, news out of Hong Kong. You can see that they're clearly planting a flag, trying to be a hub for Web3. You just referenced, you obviously are moving into Asian markets. I think that's one high point. And then the Ripple news. I mean, arguably some of the biggest news in crypto in the last several years came in the last week, which was this massive win that Ripple had over the SEC. What are your thoughts on these things?
I think you've painted a good brushstroke over it, which is we've seen a lot of interesting macro development in Asia demographically, and then this Ripple case has essentially been a game changer, I think, for everyone. And it's not a complete open and shut case. I think there's certainly chances it's going to get appealed and appealed again. If it gets appealed again, I think it's almost certainly upheld, given the kind of construction of the Supreme Court in the US right now. The really interesting thing is, and I always say this, anytime someone's like, what about the gamers' reactions in the West to Web3 games right now? And I'm like, look, our job is to make it invisible and to deliver more value. But also, have you ever seen fake Grand Order? Or have you ever actually seen what Asian gamers love? Because right now, one of the most profitable games in the world is something which, if you showed most Western audiences, they would be like, what on earth is this, essentially, right? They're very different game genres, they're very different game designs, and the consumers have entirely different preferences. And all of the signals we're seeing right now is the Japanese Prime Minister literally saying Web3 and NFTs for gaming is going to be a core area of national business interest. You have Hong Kong generating a Web3 marketing fund, and I think even last week generating this government council, which would be guiding Web3 and Web3 gaming with a lot of the Animoca team. You have the Korean giants like Nexon literally deciding to put their flagship IP, MapleStory, on the blockchain. And so, we see a lot of positive trends here. We're sort of hiring up in these regions pretty aggressively. And I think the thing that's awesome about the Ripple case is it just provides a ton of clarity right now on actions for games in terms of developing fungible tokens. And this is obviously not legal advice, but I think that, the reading of the case is such that actually even the airdrops were pretty compliant. And that's a really powerful way that user generation or user acquisition for these games can kind of proceed. So we're very excited. We know a lot of our games kind of changing their behavior based on that case so far. So yeah, some good tailwinds.
The point you made earlier is something your team has really taught me. Justin Hulag, the head of your game studio, really sawed it into my brain. Like, Western games do not equal global games. And that the whole mobile gaming revolution was led by Asia and continues to be massive in Asia. And that anybody who's here in the US or in kind of Western nations broadly, need to get over their conception of what a great global game is. And that's exciting. It means there's so much blue ocean. There's a lot of blue space out there to go and integrate into Web3 in really cool ways and to get out of that bubble of ours. Well, awesome. Speaking of games, we are going to turn now to an awesome game demo we have from a team that has been building on Immutable. Joining me now for a demo of Kaidro, we have the Kaidro creators and co-CEOs, Peggy and Robert. Thank you both so much for joining us on Between Two Layers here today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us here today.
Thank you, Carly.
Yeah, thank you.
Very excited to get into our first game demo. Now, before we actually start looking at the game, I'd love to get into a little bit of the backstory of Kaidro, which is super interesting. If I have this right, y'all actually started on Webtoon as a comic series. Tell us a little bit about that and this transition into gaming has been like.
The way everything got started initially is Peggy and I had another company called Gadgetbot Productions that we still own today. Gadgetbot Productions' goal is to serve the industry in multiple different ways. So we help out from concept art to 3D development for video games and movies. We help out with story design documents, game design documents. We do a lot of different things, and that just comes from Peggy and I's background. We've made a lot of different short films. We've made games in the past for ourselves, and so we kind of grew into these industry experts in all these different areas. Peggy and I came from working on projects like Jurassic World, from Pacific Rim, all the way to Transformers, to games like Apex Legends, Call of Duty, and Borderlands. So we've seen a lot of different types of game products and how things have been made over the years. And so it's always been our goal to build our own intellectual property and build our own games out of those properties that we were creating. That segues me to the next part, which is our TikToks. So we don't sing and dance or anything like that over there. A lot of what we do is all world and story creation. And so Peggy and I started that back in, I want to say 2019. A lot of what we did was drawing people for a world that we were creating called Kaidro, and that started to build its own sort of hype. And so we basically used Gadgetbot to start developing the actual comic series itself. And so with that comic series, we started to post that on TikTok. We started to do contests drawing people directly into the comic itself. And that caused the project to just really blow up because of the fan base. And it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have a project today. And so they helped us not only by just being in these contests, but spreading the word. They made videos and things like that over on TikTok about the overall project, and people started to fall in love with the main characters like Ava in the story. But in the background, while Peggy and I were creating the story, we always had a goal of seeing the project grow into sort of this transmedia state. So we had ideas of how these characters would evolve into something like characters in the game, and vice versa, how game characters could make their way into the comics in the future. So it's been a many-year plan getting to this point.
I mean, it's been, like Robert said, the fan base made the difference, right? It's like people were dressing up as characters, they're making up their own characters, and that really influenced how the game really was built out as well. So we'll get deeper into that in just a bit.
I love it. Yeah, level set us here in the Kaidro universe. What is the foundational story?
So Kaidro follows Ava, going from basically a young contractor, and that's a type of, we know that as a job, but that's a type of, position in their world, since it's so defined by corporates and companies and things like that. And so Ava's journey is her going from being this sort of young contractor to understanding that she's something more. She's something called a Kaidro. And Kaidros in their worlds are, lack of a better term, are kind of like a Jedi in Star Wars. They come into contact with these things called relics. Relics connect them deeper into the astral realm, and the astral realm gives them the full power of the energy that exists in that space.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about of coming of age, of the really big theme is really spirituality versus technology. And so that's something we cover a lot. That's why we see a lot of mechs and a lot of astral things, and that stuff pops up in the game as well. So it's definitely the big clash that we have.
And so you have this transmedia background. Where does the Web3 piece come in, and why did you decide to move into Web3 gaming specifically?
It's something that Peggy and I have been interested in for many years. One version of Kaidro we started a long time ago was through VR. And so you'll find VR stuff about us because we basically did road shows at different conventions, and we were creating this prototype that we could show off with Alienware. We did it with Oculus, and we did it with HTC Vive. But at these different events, we started to hear about NFTs. We started to hear about sort of what was happening in the crypto space, and we were just fascinated by it. But I didn't necessarily know what the use case could be for us. And as time went by, I really started to fall into the idea of what NFTs were. And for me, I'm a collector, as you can tell by the things in our room back here. And so I was fascinated in this idea of rarity through the different types of mechas or pilots or spirit guardians, things like that we could create for the game, sort of like trading cards. Real quick, I'm a huge card collector. A card I actually collected as a kid, I got out of a pack, is a first edition No Shadow Charizard. So I've had this since I was like
Damn.
Yeah, so I use
cool.
a lot of my conversations, but that is a part of what we believe in, at least with the NFTs. And so there's certain rarities, things like that we built into them. But I also was a fan of like the utility side of it as well. And so for us, we take more of like a Web 2 approach to our entire IP, but we use sort of the Web 3 as almost like another game layer on top of the game itself. And so that's where like the clans come in, the rarities of the clans, and how we could associate those NFTs into the overall like meta of the game.
I mean, for us, it's like growing up as kids that played games, right? And then also being in the generation where people do have respect for digital things like rewards and also like achievements you get in Xbox and stuff that actually does matter. And so as we're going to this period of time now, it made sense for us, we were digital artists at some point. So it's like all of our artwork was digital as well. So it made sense to us that digitally things where you could get duplicates, but it's really exciting the idea of somebody owning one version of it. So it just made sense to us as we started building out this world, and especially that we had the comic already going, and then we had a fan base that was creating their own characters. And so it really made sense as a community with the Kaidro community and also for ourselves.
I want to ask y'all about your partnership with Immutable, but before I go there, what is that Charizard worth? Can you tell us?
I haven't done a great.
You got to find out.
I'm so scared to send it in, to be honest. So I forgot about it. I was looking through like my collection of cards, I want to say like 6 months ago, and then I found it. I was like, wow, thank you, 9-year-old Robert, for holding on.
That's awesome. So getting back to this question of Immutable, how did you first decide to build on Immutable, and what has it like been building on their back end?
When it comes to working with Immutable, it made sense because the scaling, is a big deal, and also for the games, obviously transactions, you want it to be not getting people too hard on those gas fees. So it made sense for us as we were talking to the IMX team and be able to hear more about, what they're building, and especially with the ZK-EVM, it just made sense.
I think to add on top of that, we've talked to a lot of different chains and a lot of different companies over the last year and a half now, since we've been in the space. And Immutable is probably the first that we've really synced up with, that they had this idea that games come first, obviously. The Web3 element is really a technology that's being added to everything that we hold dear to, like gaming and story and world creation. And so I think that sort of alignment on their thought process really resonated for us, at least in what we're creating. I
mean, the other big part is, Web 2 people getting into Web 3. I mean, it's overwhelming when you kind of look at opening a wallet and all those things, and it's the process can be really daunting. And so we liked how Immutable approached it, especially with the passports. It just makes sense. You don't want a million steps for people. And so for us, that has always been a huge thing for us. Again, being gamers and just being fans in general, being able to get our fans into the project as well, but not having to go through many, many steps that they're really unfamiliar with. That's where Immutable makes sense.
I'm going to turn us to the game itself in just a moment here, but I would love to see some of the NFTs first, if you don't mind. So for folks who may be listening at home, we've got people who watch on YouTube, we have some folks who listen. Can you describe for people what I'm looking at here?
Definitely. So before we actually show the NFTs, we wanted to show off the posters. And so the big part about Kaidro, the game, is that the game starts out with 3 clans. Each clan is sort of an ideal. Think of it like Harry Potter, like when you have the different houses like Slytherin, Gryffindor. So each of the clans have a different ideal system that they believe in, but there's a whole host of different characters, different mechas, different spirit guardians that are designed within that clan for individuals to own that have their own set of rarity and uniqueness to them. So it's not like what you see with Apex Legends or Overwatch or those types of games out there. Instead of us introducing one new character per season, we're introducing whole sets of clans that have their own identity, their own unique characters, and it's really about aligning with who they are when you're setting up with them. So that's the clans themselves. Bubblegum Violence is very cyberpunk, techno, Crew, Grimbone is very like Wasteland Warrior, Mad Max, and then Hand of Emerald is very militaristic, and believe in the idea of Gaia in their background, which has a larger thing to do with the story. But these are the NFTs themselves.
So I'm looking at a couple characters, maybe a couple mechs. Looks like a robotic horse or dragon. You'll have to forgive me for probably not knowing the right terms here. I'll let you chime in, but very cool. Definitely anime style. You've got some green hair, some pink hair. I'll let y'all fill in more of these gaps.
Yeah, definitely. So what you're looking at here is the animated version of all the NFTs. This is how the NFTs will actually show up. The only thing that's missing here is their different colored backgrounds for their clans. But you're seeing Mecha, Spirit Guardians, and Pilots. And so the first part of the NFT collection is actually going to roll out with the mechas. There's 3 classes of them, heavy, mediums, and lights, for people to collect. They'll be associated to their clans. But then those clan holders of those NFTs are going to be getting airdrops in the coming months afterwards. And those airdrops will be the other NFTs that you see here. So for us, it's all about rewarding the people who stay with us, who have collected their first NFT, and continuing to give them new characters and new stories to sort of unravel within the game.
Are y'all still active on TikTok? Like, are you talking about these and the NFTs on TikTok?
Well, so if you check out our TikToks now, we actually just went to Japan for blockchain.
WebEx?
Not WebEx. We actually went there. Well, it feels like it was just for the other day, but we actually went at the end of June to the beginning of July. And we were there for NFT Tokyo, and we were there for the IBS event in Kyoto.
And why don't you do this? Plug your TikTok handle. Is your TikTok handle at Kaidro, or what's the handle over there?
So there is an at Kaidro, at Kaidro Chronicle. There's also one for at Robert Simons and at Peggy Chung. And we have over 1 million, like 1.2 people, something like that, following us over on TikTok and all of our different accounts. But yeah, the reason why I brought up Japan is that we just did a whole documentary series between Peggy and I. Every day we were filming for like 21 days or something like that. From us leaving from here, setting up our team and heading out, and then filming out all the events, the investors, everyone that we met at all the different events. It was really fun.
So the NFTs are not on the TikTok?
We do talk about them.
Oh, you do talk about them on the TikTok.
We do talk about them.
But you're saying the most recent content is you talking about
The most recent content is us talking about the NFTs, talking about the game through all the vlogging.
And nobody's rioted yet? Nobody's come with the pitchforks to get you for using the horrible NFT phrase?
It's interesting because like what we find is our original fan base is fine with everything that we're doing. It's just the occasional wanderers we have that come in that want to riot and burn it all down. But for us, I see it as educational. It's like, it's not this thing that a lot of people saw as corruptive or evil like a year ago. For us, it's really like, own your rarity, like own this asset. Like if you're going to buy it anyways, I've worked on so many different games and projects that have shut down over the years, and people lost everything that they spent buying those assets, thousands of dollars. If you could actually own the assets and keep them with you, even if that game goes down, you still have the NFTs, you still have all that stuff in your wallet at the end of the day. So I'm a big proponent of that.
Amen. Well, let's get into this game.
Yes, let's do it.
Let's see it.
All right, team. Let's get to work.
All right, so start us off. What are we looking at here? What kind of game is Kaidro?
Awesome. Yeah, so Kaidro is a PvPvE environment for players. So what that means is players versus the environment. And so players are going to be running into different types of AI. They're going to be running into other players that they're going to be fighting, which is the other clans. And what you actually see on screen right now are actual NFTs being used for the mechas that are running around. And there'll be plenty of different use cases in-game for you to see them up close, like in the mech garage as you're doing assemblies and setups. But this is a good example of how they're actually used in the space. What's happening right now at this current moment is that different teams are shooting at each other, but they also came across the boss that appeared in the map. And so in the Kaidro lore, in the Kaidro story, we have something called the Void and the Void Fractures. That's attached to the astral realm. You can think of it almost like a cancer that exists within the astral realm. It's the negative against the positive. And so in their world, in the game at least, the fractures are starting to break through into the real. And so that's why you have all these creatures that are pouring out and attacking you. You have the big boss that's forming in the middle of the map. And it's all about you being paid as a bounty hunter by the elites in their world to destroy these things. And so that's why they're paying all these different clans to do it. They're all chasing after the same thing, and pushing back against each other and trying to take down the boss.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as you play throughout the game too, I mean, there's the competitive factor, but as you go through the season, some 90 days, you'll find out more about the world. Why is this happening? Where are these fractures coming from? And so that's part of our project here. It's not just the competitive gameplay, but also the story gets revealed as you play through it. And especially if you're, depending on what clan you are, you get kind of a little bit of a difference in there.
And I believe you said this is an earlier art style that's getting updated. Explain what we can expect moving forward.
Yeah, we'll be able to show you guys a little bit of that too, but the art style you see right now is that all the characters are being cell shaded in the space. So they look like they're hand drawn, they look like they've been painted. That isn't really going to change from the way you see them currently, but the environment is changing massively. And that's because when we first started this, it was really a proof to get it up and running and show like what we're trying to create story-wise. And so we went with more traditional methods. We built everything. We did all the UVs. We then ran it through Substance Painter and did a bunch of texture painting, stuff like that. But as we've been experimenting more, we learned that we could actually take the environment assets that we painted back for the comic and for the animation and project those directly onto the 3D assets. And so now the 3D assets are looking one-to-one to the comic itself. It's looking one-to-one to the actual animation.
And tell us about, I think there's the astral updates and mech updates that are coming with this update as well.
Yeah, there are certain, that we're adding a ton more mecha skins. So the game, like we said, is like free to play overall. And so the whole purpose of players is that you're collecting different mech parts that have different abilities associated with them that you are assembling. So like when you purchase an NFT, that really acts as like a legendary override for the mech overall, but you really have to focus on the types of things you're collecting out in the space and stuff like that in order to build a good mech, build a good armor set basically to take with you out into battle. And so we have like 95 new parts that we're introducing into the game overall at launch for people to collect and work with. So it's going to be very expansive for them to play around with. There's 3 different Spirit Guardian types that the game will start out with. And so, this is where the Spirit Guardians start to come in. Like, why do we have all these NFTs? Mm-hmm. It's because there's, from the Kaidro lore, we have mecha, Spirit Guardians, and pilots. And so the Spirit Guardians act as your skill tree in the game. You basically pull your super abilities from them. You pull some of your like light fire ammunition abilities and things like that, depending on what type of Spirit Guardian you picked. And that's why you see like a dragon running around with you in the game, is that dragon, the Spirit Guardian, helps you find the boss, but also gives you those astral abilities that are attached to you, your player. In addition, you also use mech abilities, but mech abilities are a little bit more like hard ammunition in the real world. It's like missiles, it's like tracing bullets, like different types of things like that. So this is the fun part about Kaidro, is that we're mixing like sci-fi with fantasy at a scale time in the world. It's like you're deciding between, am I going to do a hellstorm of fire that's going to come down on this enemy, or am I going to barrage them with like a missile silo that I have at my disposal. So. Yeah,
I mean, really wanting people to be able to customize their kind of gameplay. Like some people like to be more of a sniper type character, and others like running up and going like shotgun. And for the record too, I mean, like we're saying that the NFTs, you can't buy these parts. These are like stats that you have to earn, and the skill sets had to be earned. While the NFTs are more of a, like Robert said, legendary skin override.
I can cover more of that on the game side too, of like why the NFTs then at that point, if they're just going to be legendaries.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. And does that mean it's possible to play without the NFTs as well and have like that free to play version?
Yeah, exactly. So there's 3 clans that you can pay to be a part of, but there is a 4th one that the game starts out with called the free wrist. And so everybody starts out as the free wrist in the game. That allows you to get like basic missions, basic quests, things like that. You can think of it kin to things like Call of Duty or Apex Legends in that way. But if you want to be a part of a clan and start getting some of the rewards that are associated with being that, that's where the NFTs come in. And so you purchase either Bubblegum Violence or you purchase Hand of Emerald and align with that one that you want to be a part of. It acts as a legendary override, but what that does is it puts you into the clan competitions every season. It gives you a clan pass. So instead of battle passes, these are clan-based passes that are tied to your NFT itself. And what that means is that each clan, all three clans, are fighting for dominance and rewards on the map for that particular season. By the end of the season, only one clan is going to win out of the three. And the clan who wins gets special rewards and special items. Some of those are going to be new mech parts, things like that they would have earned. But on top of that, some of the rewards are KDR as well for those players, the KDR token. So this is a way for people to basically figure out, like, what clan do I want to be a part of? How do I want to compete all season long? And it takes 3 months for that whole thing to sort of play out.
So the final and most important question, when do we get access to the game? When NFTs, token launch? Give us the goods.
Yes. So we have a pretty aggressive schedule. We are launching our NFT crates in October. Those crates are going to open in November for viewers, along with a ton of marketing that's going to come out. We're dropping the animation for the IP. We're also dropping the clan comics, which basically give you an eye into what the clans are about, the different NFTs. And then after the NFTs open in November, the game and tokens are going to launch around the same time in December. So it'll be bam, 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 like one after another for the entire project.
Incredibly exciting. Congratulations to you both. And just thank you so much for joining us and sharing this with us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carly.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Kaidro, The Awakening. It began as an online comic, but quickly became a phenomenon. The story garnered tens of thousands of fans and millions of views. Now introducing The Game, an action RPG where you take on the role of a bounty hunter caught between worlds. A mech pilot with astral powers. Fight along other players in your clan as you use your unique combination of skills to hunt down the Outlander Radical. A vicious astral warrior tearing reality apart. With your spirit guardian at your side, push back the void creatures that have been unleashed and become a hero. The Kaidro comic and game creators Peggy Chung and Robert Simons are partnering on the Kaidro animation series with Tim Hedrick, writer on Voltron and Avatar: The Last Airbender. Join us now in the ever-growing community of Kaidro.
Thank you, Peggy, Robert, and now it's time to hear directly from the Immutable community. Okay, Robbie, we have a question from the community. This member asks, there are many people who come from high-profile backgrounds and deep expertise. What's the commonality between all of your executive hires? What are the top 3 things you look for?
Yes, I do actually have a 3-point framework, funnily enough. So I think on the cultural side, we've got our values, but really it kind of comes down to like hungry, humble, and smart. I think we want people who are ambitious, who are happy to be wrong and to change their minds. If you are super opinionated in crypto, but not happy to change your mind, you will lose because the space changes more frequently than any other space I've known, right? It's really like the pace of technology changes, but times 10 because of the pace of innovation in DeFi and tokens and, all sorts of traditional business models even being challenged. And of course, smart, we want people who are incredibly capable. We have a very high hiring bar. In terms of what I look for in executives, I think it's content clarity and conviction. So how much they know their craft and have domain expertise. Clarity, so how much they understand the role and sort of the frameworks they're going to be bringing and their place within it. They should have a really sort of crystal clear understanding of what to be done. And then conviction. I think you need people who are very strongly opinionated about what they need to be building in that function. And that's literally how, at a top level, I would sort of judge the interview process. I think the common thing you'll see is these people aren't necessarily coming from Web3. There's a few, but in general, we find that the pool of Web3 talent, particularly at the executive layer, is very, very small. And so if you want the world's best technology executives, it's actually very tricky to hire them from traditional Web3 category. And so we just go wherever we need to in order to get talent. And we find people who, a lot of us, for instance, exec, were really interested in crypto in their personal lives, but had never done it in a professional capacity. Justin Hulock, who is a massive, obsessed with doodles and was this Riot executive. Or you have, Dave Bicknell, who's been in crypto since 2015, our CFO, but had never professionally worked in it. Or even, Jason Suen, our chief commercial officer. But these are people who are all, Dave Bicknell ran finance for Facebook app. He managed a $70 billion P&L. You have Jason, who was head of expansion markets in Southeast Asia at Shopify. So a really sort of high pedigree go-to-market expert. Or Jill Findlay, our COO, who is, basically Australia's Sheryl Sandberg, maybe pre-controversy. It's really important for us that these people can just run the job of building an exceptional company, because at the end of the day, that hasn't changed. We still need to ship incredible product. We need to build a team with great culture in order to be able to build successfully through despair. And so I think that's the approach we've taken, and that's worked quite well for us.
And now we are diving deep. Each week we are going to dive into an important topic, conversation in Web3 gaming. Sometimes we'll be joined by guests, but today it's our first episode, and it's been a minute since Robbie and I have caught up. It is just the two of us diving deep on everything that I have missed in Immutable since I have not been doing this podcast for the last 6 months. So Robbie, I just want to kick off with what is exciting you right now in Immutable, in the ecosystem at large.
So the way I think about the progression of Web3 gaming at the moment is there are two critical blockers. One is infrastructure to make it easy for gamers to play. And the second is the content itself. And I think we're getting to the point where this as a blocker is basically nearly done. As in, I think over the next 6 months, as we launch mainnet, Immutable ekZVM, we roll out credit card purchasing for everything on any marketplace, cross-roll up liquidity. And as we've already rolled out Immutable Passport, we basically think this is getting to the point where this is no longer the blocker to having a hit. And let's be clear, up until now it has been. You cannot run really a successful performance marketing campaign when your conversion is reduced by 90% by requiring users to write down 24 C words or remember a private key. And so that's been the key blocker for hits emerging today. It's why you require massive financial incentives to have user growth of things like Axie, because there's so much initial hurdle and user friction to overcome. The second is going to be the timing on these hits. And we're doing everything in our power to both accelerate and make sure we can kind of pull these forward. And, I've shared this a few times, but we have a bottoms up map of when everything is going live. And basically, we see things going live from this November to the end of next year as roughly 40 to 50% of, most of the content building in the space today. So I'm pretty confident there's going to be a hit over that period of time. I'd welcome a hit on any platform. And obviously we're trying to make them as successful as possible as Immutable. But really the beautiful thing is that the entire space is collaborating right now, because it's like, here's the phasing, right? It's hit that's sustainable. Everyone clones the hit. And then this starts to mature beyond gaming into more complex forms of Web3. And that's the same way every other distribution shift or paradigm has happened before. You need the farm bill and everyone to create farm bill clones. And then for social gaming to mature into a long-term business model, you need Clash of Clans or the initial successful mobile games for that to be cloned. And then for people to understand, well, this is how you build successfully for a mobile audience, or the initial gacha games. And so that's what I think literally everyone is working on. And ultimately, we're in a position where the blocker is no longer going to be, hey, a user can't even figure out how to use this in the first place.
Am I interpreting you right? Did you just say that you think there'll be a hit in the next 4 to 5 months?
No. I think games start launching in 4 to 5 months and the hits start emerging over the next 12 months.
Got it. So in the next 4 to 5 months, games will start launching and a big game will emerge over the next year.
Yeah.
Which makes sense if you look at when Web3 gaming is 3 years. I guess you started in 2017, didn't you? But you were very early.
Yeah, the very end of 2017. Yeah.
But you hardly, you were, so 5 years. I mean, you were in the very, very, very beginning of all of this.
Yeah, we made the first ever multiplayer blockchain game. Yeah, I think it was right on what people would, it was all on-chain gaming. We learned a lot from those initial periods. But yeah, so I think the interesting thing is going to be, there's going to be very few hits at first, but you basically only need one. If you look at, say, Counter-Strike Go today, right? It's done $32 billion in volume over the last 3 years. That is an enormous amount of volume, and it's in a database that is locked down, where they regularly ban accounts, where they charging fees with impunity, they shut down third-party marketplaces. I think it's an excellent example of really, like, there's active analogies in the Web2 world where we could be giving these players 10x value right now.
So you're talking about Immutable Passport. We've been talking about it. We talked about it earlier. Just is key to this as this wallet system that is much better suited to onboarding new players into Web3. Can you give us an early look at how Passport is doing? What are the metrics? Are you feeling like you're getting that mainstream penetration that it's geared towards?
Yep. So first off, quick recap of Passport. It is a self-custodial email sign-on wallet you can sign up to in less than 10 seconds. The differentiator between every other easy onboarding wallet you may have ever used is this is not one wallet per game, which is how every other system, like security architecture, must be set up. But because we use multi-sig architecture, and because Immutable is one of those co-signatories and your self-custodial wallet, we can actually make this across every single game. And the eventual plan is across every single roll-up that we run, across, it will be by default from day one across every single marketplace. So the goal is, this is your literal global passport to take your assets and your funds everywhere. And that's incredibly important for user conversion and for creating a great experience for users. And we've been doing A/B testing. So we've been running, if a user tries to sign up to Guild of Guardians, one of our mobile games, using a regular email sign-on and sort of typical, say, MetaMask browser wallet, versus if they just sign up with Passport. And right now, the signups to, we'll come up with this data in the next couple of weeks, but the signups to Passport itself is out-converting just the email signups alone. As in, it is literally easier to sign up today with a wallet than it is to type your email into a registry and sort of sign up. So we'll share more data on this, but basically once we can show this evidence to games, it's, hey, this is the sort of superior conversion. It's no longer going to hold you back from, performance marketing for your mobile games. And a lot of the games we're seeing are mobile right now. So we're super excited about this. We're going to continue to iterate it, but Passport's in a great place.
What has been the reaction from the ecosystem partners, folks who are building games on Immutable? What has their reaction, I suppose, or how much are they embracing Passport right now?
Completely. Look, I think it's one of the main value propositions of using Immutable today. I think people just literally on board with it, and it's not some promise on the slide deck. It is, hey, your users can onboard in 10 seconds today. It gives you the best possible conversion. But most importantly, if a user has already deposited funds to play another game, they can use those funds to purchase assets from players in your game. And that's key, because otherwise you have silos being built up and there is no network effects building between all of these, players from each game building an ecosystem. But I would say probably over 90% of games building on Immutable today have committed to using Passport.
You start to see the picture here when we talk about the partnership with Polygon and what that does. You layer on the Passport piece, like that just becoming that one place to come that's so easy for outside developers to build their games here. Like the pieces start to come together. And I know part of that is the Immutable ZK-EVM.
Yeah. For
the many of us who find ZK-EVM stuff a little bit brain bubbling, can you give us the explain it to me like I'm 5 version of why you're so bullish on the Immutable ZK-EVM?
Yeah. So let me share. So I think the first thing is EVM compatibility, and not sort of EVM transpilability or almost compatible is clearly going to be the dominant way people want to build directly on-chain contracts. We think sort of fewer than 5 to 10% of games will want to go down this route, but for a lot of advanced games, or a lot of people building infrastructure on DeFi to support games, this is what they want to do. There are already masses of documentation built in EVM for people building smart contracts on Ethereum. And now they can directly copy and paste those onto Immutable ZK-EVM. And we're really thrilled to be able to basically offer 2 options. If you're a regular game, come and build with APIs. You never have to even know what a smart contract is. We'll run everything. And that's honestly the way I think the majority of these games will develop. But for people building DeFi or people who are wanting to build more advanced features, say Illuvium, Immutable ZK-EVM is incredibly important. And this was by far out of the few games that we were losing last year, the main reason we would lose them is a lack of smart contract compatibility and a lack of EVM. So we're really excited to be working here. I think the second thing is security. Immutable has never once in its lifetime ever wanted to compromise on security, because there is zero point to coming and investing billions of dollars into making digital property real if it's all built on a insecure bridge or sidechain or a solution that is going to lose users hundreds of millions of dollars of funds. It's why we're making Passport self-custodial. It's why we built probably the first ever mainstream application really using ZK rollups and had the first ZK rollup for NFTs with Immutable X. It's why we trialed building, Plasma and state channels in the early days and realized they didn't work. But we were never really happy taking trade-offs. ZK rollups clearly are the long-term, sort of strongly superior alternative to everything. And I believe that for NFTs in particular, even compared to things like optimistic rollups, because of cost and withdrawal times, in terms of sort of fraud proofs versus validity proofs. And one of the most important things is we can now take all of this security, but have it with smart contracts, which we haven't been able to do before. Immutable X was limited to essentially just an app-specific rollup where you could do very limited functionality. Now we can take all of that scale, all of the inherited security of Ethereum, but allow people to build smart contracts on it. And I'm, obviously Polygon is building this with their open source ekZVM technology. I think they're by far the most advanced here. You can listen to Vitalik saying that. You don't have to listen to me. But what is the most beautiful thing is that our architecture really is very complementary. We're investing in this technology that allows A, game developers to build incredibly successfully, but B, these liquidity moats or these liquidity fragmentations, which is being built today, to be unified. So you could be building one of hundreds of ZK-EVMs using this technology with Immutable and with Polygon. You could have your own ZK-EVM with your own 10,000 transactions per second, but all of your user funds, assets, and orders can be instantly traded anywhere else. And this is what we're really investing in building at the end of the day, is this giant pool of liquidity and assets which people can own, which is tradable anywhere. So we're super excited about that. We're also bringing nice things like enforceable royalties to ZK-EVM, which I think is incredibly important. You can hear Gabe Layden from Machine Zone, now DigiDaiku, speaking about how essential this is for Web3 game developers. So this is really, as I've said before, I think someone posted on a previous YouTube comment, take a drink every time Robbie says endgame tech stack for when we announce this, but that's what it is, right? There's no need to upgrade this in future. There's no need for people to think what's next on the horizon. We will be able to, with this stack, surface all of developers' needs, whether they're the most advanced or they just want to use APIs, and also create a really gas-efficient experience for end users.
You said a lot in there. I know there are some people out there who still maybe aren't exactly clear on the difference between an optimistic rollup and a ZK rollup. And you said something that sparked something for me, which is you talked about the validity proof versus the fraud proof. And somebody on your team gave me a really interesting analogy that I cannot fully remember, but it was something about the validity proof, a ZK proof being like the bouncer at the bar, where it's checking your valid ID each time you go into the bar, and a fraud proof being insert the second half of this analogy. Do you know what analogy I'm talking about?
Yeah, sure. Even you can substitute with a sticky and guards. The fraud proof would just be there's a bounty incentive for you to report anyone in the bar who's under 18. And if you do it, you get $200 and they get kicked out. But obviously the reason that that's not great is because you have essentially a period of time where these transactions are non-final, and where you have to have these assets in limbo in this withdrawal period. It's actually fine for ERC20 tokens because you can market make. You can say, hey, I'm happy as a third party to take the risk of the fraud proof being submitted. And in exchange, I'm going to give you immediate liquidity if you're trying to withdraw. You can't do that for NFTs. I can't loan you your one-of-a-kind digital asset. And so it's a very different topology. And the other one is just cost of transactions, where we need to be able to support validity, and we need to be able to support basically a cost per transaction that is incredibly low in order to support the scale of games.
I find that analogy very helpful for what it's worth, and I know others out there will as well. So thank you for explaining that. There's a lot of positive news, it feels like, coming out of Immutable. I think crypto also, unlike NFTs, seems like it's having a bit of a good moment. We obviously referenced the Ripple news above. We referenced some of what's happening in Asia. You have the Bitcoin ETF news. There's reasons that it feels like crypto itself is pumping. How much do you find crypto cycles and the mainstream, let's call it, impression of crypto impacts the work you do at Immutable?
I think We really try at Immutable to tell everyone, no matter whether it's a bull run or a bear run, this is just noise. And the most important thing is we can build products that improve the customer experience for games and for players. And the reason we chose gaming in the first place, and the reason why we didn't want to go into PFPs or collectibles, is because there is fundamental utility here that can grow completely decorrelated to whether the price of Ethereum is $400 or $4,000. I think that is the most important thing in terms of building a long-term business in the space. And I think that's been effective. You're always going to have different scenarios in each, and there's pros and cons to each. But by far the best time to build product is in bear markets. That's why we've been focusing so much. And I think this was honestly needed for Web3 gaming. It wasn't in a place where it could have succeeded 2 years ago based on the infrastructure that existed, let alone the existence of games ready to go who would solve this economic model problem. So look, I think this is my fourth bear market personally. I think it's the company's third bear market. We're very used to this by now. We really focus on just sort of creating an excellent place for people to be working on products and not having to think about too much of macro.
I agree with you that obviously the long tail of this, we'll see these things decoupled, right? The cost of crypto and what's happening in gaming assets or other parts of NFTs. Right now, though, when you talk to developer partners or maybe Web2 developer partners, do you find that part of their impression is shaped by the overall mainstream impression of crypto?
Of course. Look, if you can come into the space and you can do a pre-sale on some assets that look nice for $100 million, everyone's going to want to do that. There's going to be a ton of people who want to build a genuine Web3 game or who don't, who are going to do that. And I think the nice thing is now you just have this bucket of people. Everyone who's building right now doesn't care about doing these upfront sales, about getting this sort of NFT premium. They just care about how can I invent a economic model, a business model for games that is non-exploitative, that can grow much faster by giving away more value. And so you have a much more solid demographic of builders who are actually developing games. So that's the nice thing for us. I think there's a lot, as you say at the start, like better signal to noise ratio.
I was going to say higher quality, but more solid is a friendlier way to phrase that.
Sure.
How much for you in your role as a co-founder of Immutable, how much do you think of yourself or see yourself as needing to be a champion for Web3 gaming within the broader investor community, mainstream community? Like, is that something you think about? Is like, I need to present and be a representative for this industry?
I don't know if I think about it at an individual level. I think that Immutable is certainly in a position where, because of its market share for Web3 gaming, because of the influence we have, the decisions we make really matter. And I've always said this about whatever platform is building. If we decide to build on a sidechain, there's going to be a ton of games building on sidechains. If they end up being successful and NFTs end up expanding into new verticals, suddenly the whole world of digital assets starts off on the wrong foot. And we haven't really done much to empower true self-custodial, decentralized ownership of digital assets at all. So I think that is a very important leadership position successful companies in the space hold, which is, do I do a centralized solution? Do I cut corners? Do I use my partner firm and allow them to trade with unlimited leverage and then blow up a $30 billion exchange? And these are real questions, right? Which is like, I think there is a huge burden for companies in the space who are in these leadership positions in whatever category they are to make sure they're doing things the right way. So that is definitely important. It's why we focus a lot right now on solving this economic piece, where I want to be able to, in 6 months, any game we built on Immutable, we say, here is a provable economy that if you can bring the players, obviously we can't guarantee every game is going to be a hit, but if it is a hit, we can guarantee the economy will be successful. And I think that will be a massive improvement in conversion of these sort of successful games as well.
Final question. What are you most looking forward to coming down the pipeline at Immutable? Maybe a favorite game that you're excited to see released?
I'm actually personally really excited for Guild of Guardians and the new way that this is shaped up. I've been playing it literally this weekend. I told Justin I'd trial it, and I ended up playing for 5 hours. So that's in a really good place. Obviously, our friends at Illuvium, we have a lot of love for. That game is looking excellent and is basically going to be slated to be the first AAA game out in blockchain. There's some other really interesting successes that are popping up. I think Cross the Ages has stayed in the for 5 weeks as #1 in France and Australia for strategy games, and ranking pretty well elsewhere as well. So look, we're seeing some really nice early signals. On the technical side, Immutable's ekZVM mainnet launch, which is going to be coming up pretty soon, is by far what I'm most excited about, as well as these consumer product pieces. And now that we've gone from 0 to 1 on launching Passport, on launching Checkout, the team's job is now, how do we track what percentage of people can purchase, what percentage of people drop off, and obsessively iterate by improving user experience, by improving compliance overview, no matter where you're coming from the world. It's all about, like, let's relentlessly iterate to make this stuff as frictionless as DoubleClick, Apple Pay, right? That's kind of the standard that we have to compete against.
I love it. And for folks who are also excited about Guild of Guardians, they should check out the interview that we did last season with Justin Hulog. We had a great conversation, and he really talked specifically a lot about Guild of Guardians and used it as an example of what Web3 gaming can do that is unique from any sort of Web2 gaming, which I think was really cool and definitely an aha moment for me. So folks, go check that out. And now to close the show, we have our final thoughts with Robbie, where Robbie will be giving his unfiltered takes. Robbie, take it away.
If you're watching this video, you're probably one of the top 0.1% interested people in Web3 gaming as a concept in the world. You're incredibly early. And what I wanted to say is that this is a very important mission. One week it might be we have the Ripple case and we're elated. The other week we might hear bearish news, the market might be down, and that might impact sentiment in another way. The most important thing is, at the end of the day, the world is becoming increasingly digital and increasingly virtual. There are 3.1 billion gamers today. We've just seen Apple release their mixed reality headset. We've seen games go from something which was a niche 30 years ago to having, in literally one game alone, $32 billion of assets traded in 3 years. It's only going to keep expanding from here and take over people's work, social lives, the way they interact, and ultimately the backbone of our digital lives. The most important thing is that these assets are, A, in the first place, ownable, rather than us being sold this lie that just because something is intangible, you shouldn't have property rights to it. But second of all, that the infrastructure it's built on is truly decentralized, truly ownable, rather than owned by a giant centralized monopoly who is charging 30 or 50%. So really my message is pretty simple, which is, irrespective of what is happening week to week, you're part of an incredibly important community that is building something that is essential for player and user ownership of digital stuff over the next many decades. And right now, the trends that we're seeing are extremely bullish. We have Immutable at the end of last year had roughly 45% market share of Web3 games. With this Polygon partnership, we're seeing our strongest sales month ever. And our job right now is, how do we consistently improve products to get these games to a hit faster than ever, and then scale that across the entire industry? And so my message is really, if you're watching this, if you're part of this community, please come chat in the Discord, give us feedback on Twitter, play games, share what you're seeing, because ultimately the people building this there also need to hear that too. So we're really excited. I think there's been a ton of really interesting macro movements over the last few months, but ultimately the most important thing is that we are here building for the next decade. So thank you, and catch you next time on Be Well.